The telephone. Perhaps the most potent method for radio personalities to reach out and touch their listeners, and for their listeners to reach out and make their contributions to a show's entertainment quotient. In markets large and small, program directors are saying, yeah, I'm looking for someone who's got a real personality, kind of a radio version of David Letterman or Arsenio Hall. Oh, and by the way, the guy should be really good with phones. Hi, I'm Dan O'Day. For the next hour, we're going to talk about on-air phone calls, why you should or shouldn't do them in the first place, and what you can do to get much, much more from your telephone. Speaking of David Letterman, one of his contributions to American culture is the popularizing of his daily top 10 list. Here is my own tribute to Letterman, except this top 10 list isn't funny. Drum roll, please. Oh, I forgot. My budget doesn't allow for a drum roll. Why don't you go ahead and imagine a drum roll at the end of this sentence, and then we'll go ahead with the top 10 list. The top 10 most common on-air phone flaws. Number 10, the jock does not address the caller by name. Number 9, the jock does not listen and respond to what the caller says. Number 8, the jock doesn't know where he wants the call to go. Number 7, the jock does not exercise control over the conversation. Number 6, the jock doesn't know how or when to end the call. Number 5, the jock puts a caller on the air who shouldn't be there, not without a lot more direction than the caller has been given. Number 4, the jock isn't sure why she's putting the caller on the air in the first place. Number 3, the jock forgets the caller usually represents most of his audience. Number 2, the jock puts potentially good but poorly executed calls on air without editing. And the number one most common on-air phone flaw, the jock puts a lousy call on air because she is too lazy to do the work needed to turn a lousy call into a great one. Did you notice that there weren't any laughs in that top 10 list? That's because, as anyone who has ever heard any knows, bad phones aren't funny. Before we discuss ways to transform bad phones into good phones, let's discuss the legal aspects of putting another person's voice on the air. In the United States, there are two aspects to be considered before recording and airing someone's voice. The two aspects are recording and airing. Let's talk first about recording phone calls. The recording of another person's voice over the phone falls under the heading of wiretapping and is dealt with by state laws. If you live in the United States, you live in either a dual consent state or a single consent state. In a dual consent state, both parties of a telephone conversation must be aware in advance that their conversation is being recorded. In such a state, recording even a single hello is illegal if the person has not already given you permission to do so. In a single consent state, at least one of the parties to a telephone conversation must be aware in advance that the conversation is being recorded. If you live in a single consent state and you're recording a phone conversation to which you are a party, then obviously you have met the legal requirement under the wiretapping statute. Even if you live in a single consent state, however, the FCC prohibits you from recording a phone call for later on-air playback without first obtaining permission to record from the other party. The following is quoted directly from FCC docket number 85-37, dated September 1988, and I quote, "Broadcast use of an individual's telephone conversations carries the potential for a more serious and intense loss of privacy than the singular recording of a conversation by the other party to the call. We are convinced that this risk and the need for an effective enforcement mechanism warrant continuation of our long-standing requirement that notice of intent to broadcast a conversation actually precede the recording of transmission of the telephone call," unquote. In plain English, although I don't believe they have been effective in communicating this message to radio stations, The FCC says if you plan to use it for later broadcast, you cannot record a phone conversation without first obtaining the other party's permission. The FCC also maintains a key interest in the airing of calls. FCC regulations require any party to a telephone conversation to give advance permission before a radio station is allowed to put that voice on the air. Again, this means that if you call someone live and you put their hello on the air without first having obtained permission to do so, you are violating FCC regulations. This tape will not concentrate on put-on phone calls or candid phone calls, the kind in which a disc jockey calls some unsuspecting victim and plays a practical joke on the person on the air, or when an air personality wakes up some celebrity with an early morning call. I won't focus on them here, because if you truly do air someone's voice without his prior permission, you're violating FCC regulations and making your station vulnerable to FCC fines and sanctions, and also making both you and the station vulnerable to lawsuits charging you, among other things, with invasion of privacy, willful infliction of emotional distress, and more. The FCC does, however, recognize the concept of implied consent. Implied consent exists in situations where the caller should reasonably have been expected to understand that her call might be put on the air. An example of this would be a call-in talk show, in which even the casual listener should be able to perceive that callers are put on the air. Other examples would be call-in dedication or swap meet type programs. The situation becomes less clear, however, when it's a music show featuring disc jockeys who occasionally air callers. One way to protect yourself in such a situation is to air disclaimers within the show, something like, "Got something on your mind? Call us on our listener line, 555-1234, and remember, we record all calls, and maybe we'll put you on the air." Or you might choose a more standardized disclaimer. "We're taking your request now at 555-1234. All calls are recorded for possible playback on the air." If you utilize such a disclaimer, don't try to bury it in some barely noticeable day part. The disclaimer should not be treated as fine print that you hope no one will notice. The concept of consent, even of implied consent, rests on the principle of informed consent. Airing a disclaimer at 2 o'clock on Sunday morning for calls that air Monday through Friday during morning drive does not provide for informed consent. For people calling into your station, there's an easy method that should greatly minimize your risk of, "Well, I didn't know I'd be on the air," complaints. Attach a tape or computer recording device to your request line. Whenever a listener calls, they'll hear a variation of the disclaimer we already used, something like, "Thanks for calling X102 FM. The disc jockey will be with you in a moment, and remember, we record all calls, and maybe we'll put your call on the air." For calls which you place, the rule is cut and dried. Get the person's permission before putting even a single one of his words on the air. The most effective way to encourage listeners to call is to air well-executed calls from other listeners. Have you ever watched people looking hungrily at an untouched buffet at a party? Everybody is hungry, but no one wants to be the first to make the move for the food. Once some brave pioneer makes the first move, however, the rest of the group dives right in. That's why they have shills in Las Vegas casinos, people who are hired by the casino to sit at the gambling tables and make small bets, because many people are intimidated by an empty table. It's much easier to find an empty blackjack table than it is to find one with just one or two players, because those one or two players invariably attract several other players who grab the remaining seats and lay their money down. Risking, or more probably losing money is one thing, but risking being embarrassed by being the only player at a table and having, it seems, everyone's attention on you is a risk that many people are unwilling to take. Many of your listeners would love to participate, but they need to know it's safe to call. Until your listeners fully get the message that you actually want them to call, you might need to prime the pump a little by staging bogus incoming calls. Not contest winners, obviously, but people with jokes or comments or questions or requests, friends or coworkers who have been carefully coached on how to be a great on-air caller. What are the qualities of an ideal on-air caller? I say ideal because I know you can't always get a caller who meets all of these requirements. But to the extent that you do have control over which calls you air, here are some qualities to look for. 1. Enthusiasm. She should sound as though she's thrilled to be speaking with you, playing the contest, making the dedication. 2. Clarity of diction. He doesn't have to speak like a Shakespearean actor, but the audience should be able to understand him without great effort. 3. Clarity of transmission. A lousy or poorly wired phone system can sabotage even the best of calls. Listening to a conversation filled with static or with faint voices or with one of the parties, or maybe both of the parties, repeatedly having to say, "What?" is about as enjoyable as watching an out-of-focus motion picture. 4. Clear understanding of why she's calling. The ideal caller knows before dialing whether she's calling to enter a contest, to make a request, to register a complaint, or simply to talk to the disc jockey. 5. Clear understanding of what he wants to say. "I want to comment on the baseball game" is an understanding of the purpose for calling, but it's not the content itself. Understanding the content of what he wants to say means, I want to say that last night's game was a disgrace. 6. Well thought out, rehearsed if possible, expression of that thought. A well thought out expression of that particular thought might be, Ed, this is Joe Listener in Pacoima. I just called to say every good Dodger fan should be ashamed of last night's officiating. I think the league should start requiring sobriety tests for umpires. 7. Apparent respect for the air personality. This can be shown either directly, by speaking in a respectful yet easygoing manner, or by speaking in a manner that makes it clear the caller is very familiar with the show, by referring to regular characters or running gags or the big topic that's been mentioned a lot on the show this week. 8. Representation of the type of listener your show wants to attract. If you're programming to an older, affluent, adult contemporary audience, airing a request from a jive-talking teenage gangbanger probably won't help further the image you're seeking. 9. Understanding of what you want her to add to your show. The best caller realizes that you pick and choose the calls you air and will tailor her content and presentation accordingly. 10. Willingness to play along when necessary, to create the maximum entertainment value for your listeners. Again, the ideal caller realizes you're airing his call not just because he picked up the phone and you answered, but because you're trying to provide something fun for your audience. Let's go back to number 3, clarity of transmission. One of the worst things to have to listen to is a conversation between a disc jockey and a caller in which both parties sound as though their voices are coming through the phone lines. The air personality's voice should be on mic. If you're on a small market station whose studio mic is not wired to the phone, there are 3 things you can do. Your less desirable option can be used with live on-air calls. Simply hold the telephone receiver up alongside the microphone and simultaneously speak directly into the mic and into the mouthpiece of the phone, allowing the caller to hear you over the phone, but also allowing the microphone to pick up your voice directly. 2 better options are to have your engineer either dip into the budget or do some relatively simple wiring and buy or build a telephone interface. A telephone interface takes the preamp from the microphone and mixes it with the telephone. That is, it takes the actual control room microphone and the phone line and mixes them together into the tape recorder. This way, when you turn off your microphone, it's actually still live to a certain degree and can be used to record telephone conversations between you and the listener. Each time you air a good call, you send 3 messages to your listeners. A, if they call, they might get to speak to the disc jockey. B, if they call, they might end up on the air. C, if they want to be put on the air, they should infuse their calls with key elements noticeable in previous on-air calls: enthusiasm, humor, controversy, etc. The more good calls you air, the more good calls you'll get. Your best potential source of on-air phoners is your request line. Answer your request line. That's what it's there for. If you're too busy or too important to pick up the request line and wade through the calls in search of bits and pieces you can use, don't expect any sympathy from me when you complain about the lack of good incoming phoners. Automatically record all incoming calls. Never again will you suffer the frustration of having a listener ad-lib a great line, but then be unable to repeat it on tape. If your studio is not already wired to record all calls automatically, it can be done easily by any qualified or even semi-qualified engineer. Keep a digital log of all recorded calls. This is a task that easily can be assigned to an intern. At the beginning of your shift, set the tape machine's digital counter to 000 and have someone keep a log of calls that might be saved or edited for future use. So when you get off the air, you look at your log. It might say 013, good old lady voice; 086, baseball riddle; 124, raucous laughter; 167, quote, what do you guys think you're doing, unquote. These can be carted up and used as drop-ins, or wild tracks, or supposedly live phoners the next day, the next week, or who knows, even at your next job. Don't passively answer your request line. Actively seek out airable bits from everyday request calls. A woman calls to request Glenn Fry. If her voice represents a substantial portion of your target audience, don't simply say, I'll get to it as soon as I can, and then hang up. Talk to her. Interview her until you find something you can use. So why do you want to hear this particular song? What's the sexiest thing about Glenn Fry? What do you think of his haircut these days? How would you describe the way your hair looks right now? Do you prefer men with long hair or short hair? So do you think the Eagles should get back together? Are you calling from work? What's the best thing about your job? The worst thing? Who works harder, you or your boss? What do you think of Congress's new pay raise? Simply keep asking questions until you get a response you can use. If you can't get a paragraph, get a sentence. If you can't get a sentence, settle for a phrase, or even just one word.
Yeah, well, it's outrageous the way the politicians in Washington are, giving themselves, more money.
Okay, here's the edited phoner. You open the mic and you say, Marv Plotsky of Live Oak, can you tell me in just 3 syllables what you think about Congress's 33% pay raise?
Outrageous!
Then you hit your spot or your jingle or your music. Listen to your callers and use what they give you. If you ask a caller, what do you do for a living? And he says, I work at the post office. That should elicit from you a different response than if he said, I'm a chiropractor or I'm a bus driver. When talking to a listener on the air, that person represents the rest of your audience. If you make her feel uncomfortable or foolish, you are making all of your listeners feel uncomfortable. If a caller mispronounces a word or expresses nervousness with a slight stutter or an uneasy laugh, and you respond by ridiculing her, you're not being an entertainer, you're being a bully. You're making her feel embarrassed, and you're making your listeners feel embarrassed for her, and for you for being so insensitive. You need to respect and protect your listeners who care enough about your show to call in and contribute to it. Address your callers by name. The most beautiful sound in the English language is a person's own name. Ask for the caller's name at the beginning of the conversation and use it in a natural, friendly way throughout. Don't make fun of odd-sounding names. How do you like it when someone ridicules your name? If you have difficulty pronouncing a caller's name, don't blame the name. Respectfully attempt to get it right, and the caller will appreciate the effort. On the other hand, I wonder if the contest winner referred to in the following break appreciated the way the disc jockey treated her name.
With another $1,000 Song of the Day winner today from Price Tracy Iray. I can't pronounce this. I-R-A-I-R-T. However you pronounce that, Tracy picking up $1,000 today.
If you've had the caller on hold for a minute or two before putting her on the air, just before going live, pick up the line and put her at ease by speaking soothingly and using her name. Okay, Susie, we're going on the air in just a few seconds. Relax, you're going to be great. Here we go, Susie. Feed lines to callers. You don't have to be the star of every moment of your show. Let your listeners share some of the load. You're the one who ultimately gets the credit. If a guy calls on the request line and represents your target audience, enlist his assistance. Hey, did you hear about the new Pee Wee Herman cookbook? You tell the joke. If he laughs at the punchline, then you say, hey, do me a favor. You tell me the joke, and I'll put it on the air. If you've chosen your caller well, he'll agree. It might take him a couple of tries to get it right, but you're rolling tape the entire time. Once you've got it, thank him and move on to the next call. Then, later in your show, the record ends, you open the mic, K102 with Ed Jock, and who's on the phone?
Roger Beckman from Lakeland. Hey, did you hear about the new Pee Wee Herman cookbook?
Here's a guy who does an excellent job of listening to his callers, reacting to what they give him, and feeding them punchlines while he plays it straight. This is Jimmy Steele from the Eagle in Dallas, Texas. When this show took place, the Eagle was positioned as a kick-ass rocker, and Jimmy did a night show aimed at teenagers.
What can I do for you at the Eagle?
Hi.
Hi.
You'll do me a super duper favor.
And buy you some new clothes because what you're wearing looks kind of shabby.
Excuse me.
All hit 97.1 KETL, the Battle of the Hits and the Boogie Check on the way. Hello there.
Yeah, it's Brad.
So?
Never mind.
Okay.
Thanks.
It was really great talking to you. What do you want to ask me?
What are two hot-blooded white American females supposed to do on a Thursday night besides sit home?
Run up and down Greenville Avenue naked.
Well, we live in Arlington.
Run up and down Cooper Street naked.
Not on a Thursday night.
Why, not enough guys who enjoy it?
Not on a Thursday night, there's not. There's nothing to do for women on a Thursday night. Why do you think we're listening to you?
You're a winner at the Rock and Roll Eagle. What's your name?
Christy O'Brien.
Christy, where you calling from?
Dallas.
Christy, I have got every cassette that U2 has ever recorded just for you.
Can I trade them for Pink Floyd?
No, bitch, I'll have to shoot you.
The Eagle kicks ass!
Was that supposed to be funny?
Note how well Jimmy knows his audience. The worst thing you can say to a typical teenage American girl is something derogatory about her clothing. In the first break, a girl innocently called to make a request, and Jimmy interrupted to insult her mode of dress. In response, you heard her surprised yet entertaining indignation. What about that call from Brad? And what about my suggestion that you should never make your callers feel foolish or uncomfortable? Brad sure sounded foolish, but Jimmy never overtly put him down. He let Brad's personality speak for itself without commenting on it. I wouldn't put a call like this on the air more than maybe once a year, however. And did you notice what happened when Jimmy named the cruising street in Dallas, only to be told the girls live in the suburb of Arlington? Instantly, he named Arlington's cruising street, not because he goes cruising, but because he takes the time to research his target audience. And did you notice how Jimmy was content to allow that girl to deliver the punchline? Why do you think we're listening to you? He doesn't insist upon being the star every moment of his show. And note how by feeding a line to a caller, can I trade them in for Pink Floyd, he was able to give the illusion of incredibly fast ad-libbing in response, complete with gunfire. Feed non-sequitur lines to callers. You don't need a prepared joke to set up a listener's participation. If you like the caller's voice, ask her to say something you can use at some other time. You call yourself a disc jockey? Hey, you sound hot tonight. Mama warned me about guys like you. Isn't there some kind of law against that kind of stuff? Now you have your listeners providing you with a steady stream of fresh drop-in lines. Use callers' lines out of context. A caller says,
I was at the hockey game last night when the fight broke out, and in all my years as a hockey fan, that was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen.
Nothing wrong with that call, except your PD has issued a strict order. Don't talk about sports during your shift. So you wait for a time to use that comment completely out of context. And at last you spot an opportunity. Miss America made an appearance at a station promotion, and she actually kissed one of your fellow disc jockeys. You do a brief rap about it on the air. Hey, we got Tom from Secaucus on the line. He says he was at the Coliseum last night for the Y106 blast-off, and he actually had a front-row view of the infamous kiss. Hey, Tom, you saw Miss America kiss the ugliest voice on radio. What was it like?
That was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen.
Let's listen to a real on-air excerpt. You're going to hear what I think is kind of a weak bit, followed by a phone call. Listen carefully, because after the excerpt, I'm going to ask you a deceptively simple question.
But the thing is, it's working. He's getting publicity.
If you want to know what Joy's talking about, look on the cover of USA Today or look in the New York Post. There's a picture of him with the black magic marker swastika right across his face and part of his hair cut off.
Now all the other talk show hosts are getting jealous because they're not getting the same publicity. So Geraldo is planning to take his microphone into the bathroom stall and actually look for the skinheads. And Phil Donahue wants to put little swastikas all over his dress.
Hi, you're on High 97.
Hi, this is David calling from sunny Manhattan.
Uh-huh.
Listen, I'm concerned about this Mort Downey show thing. They're now, I'm flipping channels last night, and they're now advertising for audience members. They're soliciting audience members. And all this time, I thought they just dredged him up from the bottom of the river.
What you just heard was Stevens and Gridnick when they were doing mornings at Hot 97 in New York City. Now for the test question. When do you think the original conversation between Ron, the disc jockey, and the caller took place? A, live as we heard it on the air. B, earlier in the show, recorded off the air. Or C, prior to that day, recorded off the air. Take a moment to think about it. And the answer is none of the above. You see, the conversation you just heard never took place. Stevens and Gridnick went to the management of their radio station and said, we'd like to have our own answering machine. And the next day they did, their very own dedicated phone line hooked up to the Stevens and Gridnick answering machine. They plugged the number a few times a day during their show, offering a question of the day or topic of the day, but also making it clear that anyone could call in with a comment or a joke or anything they wanted to say. Everyone who called that number first had to sit through the recorded message. Hi, thanks for calling the Stevens and Gridnick answering machine. At the sound of the tone, you'll have 30 seconds to leave your message. And remember, if we like what you say, we might put your recorded voice on the radio at Hot 97. You'll note that that recorded message supplied pretty strong evidence of informed consent. So one day a listener read a newspaper article explaining that a controversial talk show host, Morton Downey Jr., was advertising for listeners. He called in and left his recorded comment. Ron and Joy, that's Stevens and Gridnick, thought it was something they might be able to use in the future, so they dubbed it to cart and waited for Morton Downey Jr. to do something newsworthy. Several weeks later, Downey was in the news for making some bizarre claim about being attacked by neo-Nazi skinheads in a San Francisco airport restroom. It was on the news and all the papers and on the wire services. Ron and Joy went on the air, made their own comment on the news item, and then hit the cart with a caller recorded from weeks before. Ron interacted with that recorded voice in a way that made it sound as though he were part of the conversation. Really? Oh, uh-huh. Made it sound like that conversation actually did occur. The impression the audience got was, wow, no matter what subject comes up, there's always somebody listening who calls in with something funny to say. Everybody must listen to these guys. By strategically using strong excerpts from recorded calls, you can create the illusion of your listeners always being right there with a sharp comment. And the more often that illusion is created for your listeners, the more likely they are to make it a reality by actively participating in your show. There is no excuse for airing a lousy-sounding contest winner. If necessary, coach your contest winners into providing you with exciting calls. There is nothing more deadly than an on-air call with a listless contest winner. Whose fault is it if such a call is aired? The listener's? Of course not. The listener is not a professional entertainer. It is your job to do whatever is necessary to enable the caller to do something worth airing. Have you ever aired or heard a call like this from a contest winner? You are caller number 10. What's your name?
Edward Casper.
Edward, you have won front row seats for Bon Jovi.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now this is a caller who needs coaching. So, let's coach him. Now, Edward, I'm going to give you a few moments to get in touch with how excited you really are to have won front row seats for Bon Jovi. Do you really want these tickets?
Sure.
I'm not sure I believe you. You're going to have to convince me that you really want them.
I really want those tickets. I'm dying to go.
Now, at this point, if you air your contest calls pre-recorded, you've got what you need to go on the air. If you put the winners on live, you continue. Okay, great, Edward. Hold on to those emotions. I want to hear every ounce of excitement in your voice when we go on the air. When contest winners refuse to be coached, trick them. Let me show you what I mean. You've just won $5,000.
Oh, good.
Just good? Wouldn't you say it's fantastic?
I guess so.
Okay, now you've just won $5,000, and that's not just good, it's... What is it?
Fantastic.
By now it's obvious. This person refuses to act excited. He knows you've got to give him the money, no matter how bored he sounds. So you switch gears. Okay, now I'm going to record this. When the tape recorder is on, you have to talk real loud so it can pick up your voice through the phone. Ready?
Yeah.
Oh, no, much louder so the tape machine can hear you.
I said, I'm ready.
Okay, now I'm going to roll the tape, and you tell the world that it's fantastic. Tape's rolling. How do you feel?
Fantastic.
Oh, no, louder.
Fantastic.
I can't hear you. Louder.
Fantastic.
The record ends. You open the mic, and your audience hears, Rick Rydell of Winter Park, you have just won $5,000. Rick, in 3 syllables, how do you feel?
Fantastic.
Granted, this particular caller now thinks you're deaf and probably not very bright. I mean, geez, you can't even wire a telephone to a tape recorder properly. But your listeners hear a contest winner who apparently is so thrilled by winning that he practically jumps through the speakers with excitement. Edit your calls to make them tight and fast-paced. Use what's good. Throw away what isn't. The people in our industry who do good phones invariably are good editors. Editing on the fly is demanding and requires great dexterity and concentration, but it can pay big dividends to the ambitious air personality. Here are 3 specific techniques for coaching your callers into giving you something you can use on the air. The first technique is called leading. This occurs when you've got someone who wants to say something but doesn't know how to say it. When you realize what he wants to say, You interrupt and say it for him. For example,
Yeah, I'm calling to, you know how you said you were gonna, play 2 records, and then after you played them, we could...
you want to cast your ballot in our Battle of the Bands?
Yeah, that's it.
The second technique is called extending. When children learn to talk, they start with single words. Adults can help the kids learn by extending those words into sentences. When the child says, hot, the adult can respond by saying, yes, the stove is hot. With extending, you take the few words your caller gives you and stretch them into something more coherent.
That was stupid.
That Sylvester Stallone remark was stupid?
Yeah, he's not that smart.
Great. I'm going to record you saying, hey, that Sylvester Stallone remark was stupid. He's not that smart. Ready?
Yeah. That Sylvester Stallone remark was stupid. He's not that smart.
Okay, now you got a little nervous and
Yeah, I
rushed.
know.
Try it once more. I want you to say, hey, that Sylvester Stallone remark was stupid. He's not that smart. Go ahead.
Yeah, that Sylvester Stallone remark was stupid. He's not that smart.
That doesn't exactly make for a sparkling phoner, but it is a coherent statement. Now you can add a little sparkle to it by moving along to our next technique. The third technique is called restating. This can be used to reshape your caller's basic message into a much more entertaining or perhaps just more pithy form. For example,
Yeah, Dan, I just want to say that I think the mayor has a dull personality and is kind of a wimp.
hey, that's great. I'll tell you what, I'm going to roll a tape, and I want to record you saying what you just said about how the mayor has the personality of a shoelace and the backbone of tofu.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
The mayor...
The mayor has the personality of a shoelace and the backbone of tofu.
Oh, yeah. The mayor has the personality of a shoelace and the backbone of tofu.
Great, thanks. The most important element of great on-air phoners is control. You need to direct the conversation, to guide the caller, to interrupt when necessary, to steer it to a conclusion that will add to your show. When doing phoners, you need to forget everything your parents taught you about etiquette. When you reach the climax of a phoner, the punchline, the scream, the laugh, the comment, the request, the giggle, immediately move to the next show element, the record, the spot, the jingle, etc. Thank the caller off the air. Say goodbye after you turn off the mic. Let's play program director for a moment. Here is an on-air phone conversation from a small market. I'd like you to evaluate this break from that perspective. An on-air phone call with a listener of a small market radio station.
6 to 10 WCMB, and on the line is Gladys, right, Frida?
Yeah.
Hi, Gladys. How are you?
John R.
Yeah, what's
Now
happening?
listen, I heard you're going to Florida.
Orlando, yeah.
Yes. And I told Frida before that I wish you a safe journey and God guide you safely and have a good time.
Well, we appreciate
And my
that.
prayers will be with you.
Does she know something?
I listen to you every day.
Does she know something we don't know, Frida?
I'm not sure, but you took a policy out on this, didn't you,
did
Dad?
Okay, what'd you think? For a small market, I'd say it's a pretty good phoner. If I didn't already know that this conversation continues.
Hey, thanks, Gladys. We
I have
appreciate it.
read different things to Frida on God's Word.
Okay.
And John, I'm a good Christian woman.
Good for you. All right.
And I'm hoping that God will guide you safely.
Well,
And
thank
my
you very
prayers will be with you, and I listen to you every day.
much. Oh, thanks, sweetheart. We'll be back Tuesday morning.
Okay?
Thanks for
Are you flying or are you
Gonna fly down.
You're going to fly down?
Yeah, fly back.
Well, that'll be wonderful.
Okay, hon. Thanks a lot for
The
calling.
Lord will guide you and be with you.
Thanks, bud.
All right?
It's up to you to control the conversation. This air personality was too polite to interrupt this nice old lady, and the result was a phone piece that went on much too long. He didn't make his show sound good, and to many listeners at least, he didn't make the nice old lady sound good. He made her sound, again, at least to a large portion of the audience, like a bit of a religious nut. This call was aired live. I have no problem with that. But if you're going to air calls live, you'd better know how to hit the off button. Be sure of your goal before putting a caller on the air. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to air the voice of someone who represents your ideal target audience? Share a laugh or two with a listener and, by extension, with your mass of listeners? Directly communicate with a listener in a more personal way than by microphone, thereby thrilling your listener and entertaining your mass of listeners? Or are you just trying to get the call out of the way because it's on the log and you've got other more important things to do on your show? As you listen to this next phoner, see if you can figure out what the jock was trying to accomplish.
Ben.
Kathy Gruber. Good morning. How you doing?
Okay, how are you?
Good. You got yourself a pizza and an anchovy for answering the question, right? Who starred in Crocodile Dundee?
It's Paul Hogan.
That's right. Hey, thanks for listening to us.
This kind of call drives me nuts. Sure, we understand that he qualified the winner off the air, but why does he deprive his listeners of the excitement of hearing a contestant try to win? The fun is not in hearing the answer to the trivia question. The fun lies in hearing a listener play the game. That's why on TV game shows, they don't come back from a commercial and say, "Well, while you were gone, our contestant correctly answered 3 questions in a row and won the big jackpot. Johnny, tell her what she's won." Don't lead off your winner's call with, "You've correctly answered the question. What's the correct answer?" Instead, act as though you don't yet know whether the caller can answer the question correctly. Kathy Gruber, if you can tell us who starred in Crocodile Dundee, you will win. Here's a technique for building your own unlimited supply of phone contributors. Let's say you're at a party and you've been talking to a guy named Dave. Dave considers himself to be the world's foremost expert on politics, and he readily proclaims his opinions loudly and colorfully. You realize that while he might be kind of a jerk at a party, he'd be wonderful as an occasional telephone guest on your show. So you take out a business card, jot down a secret phone number, and give it to him, first making him promise never to reveal that number to anyone else. You explain that it's your special studio hotline, and that any time there's some political news story that he wants to talk about, he should call during your show, and you'll answer that secret hotline right away, so he won't have to get the busy signal that other callers get when trying to reach the disc jockey on the request line. And if he first takes a moment to think about what he wants to say, you might even put him on the air. And you get his phone number so you can call him when you need an obnoxious political comment. Of course, in those cases, you don't have to tell your listeners that you called him. You might just say, "We've got Dave on line 3. What's up, Dave?" and allow your listeners to assume that Dave called you. By the way, you don't have to really give out the station hotline. It might be the warm line, a special line that you have set aside for your special callers. If you do this with enough people, pretty soon you'll have created a repertory company of regular telephone contributors to your show. And remember, every time you air such a phone call, you encourage 100 other people to call in too. Whenever you meet people at public appearances, or just in your day-to-day life, take notes as soon as possible with their names, addresses, and phone numbers, and where they work. Maintain a file of these names, categorized by profession. Then, when there's something in the news that you want to do something with on the air, you can go right to your file for your list of appropriate contacts. Let's say, for instance, that 7-Eleven stores are in the news. They've just announced that they'll no longer carry Playboy magazine. You look in your file under convenience stores, and there you find the name of the guy who manages the 7-Eleven near your house. You call him up, allow your listeners to assume he called you, and soon your listeners realize that no matter what happens in the news or in your community, someone in your audience is likely to call you up and give you the inside story. Here's a guy who does a great job of listening to his callers and using the phone to create excitement. This is George Mcfly.
WAVA and George Mcfly. What went wrong? She's still saying so long at your door. There's got to be more. That's not how it ends. You just can't be friends. What's your bag, babe? Is that how the story goes, Jim?
That's about it. And I just want to say, please come back, Jenny. I love you.
Go back, Jenny. He's not finished yet. 105 WAVA playing more than 50 minutes of music every hour. George Mcfly. All right, Matt. What's that letter to your girlfriend say, bud?
Well, I just want to say that what I like about her is that she's my one and only true love. What can I say? I'm hooked on her. Oh, and hey, all you WAVA listeners, when the radio's on, you better dance, because George McFly is certainly a party man.
You incorporated WAVA and myself into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a great letter. She's going to love you for it. Get it in the mail tonight.
Okay, thanks, George.
WAVA. What's your name? Who do you want to dedicate it to?
My name is Teresa, and I'd like it to dedicate it to my husband, Billy, because we're far apart from each other, and we'll be far apart from each other for a long time.
Where's your husband, Billy?
He's in jail right now, so he's going to be in there for a long while.
Oh, yeah, man. Okay, I'm not even going to ask any questions about that. You love the guy, and that's all there is to it, huh?
Yeah, I get to see him before I leave. I'm moving to Florida, so I'm in Virginia.
Okay, well, good luck to you both. I hope things work out for you.
Okay, thank you.
105 WAVA. Was that good?
Good. I was running away from you. George, I gotta go see the new kids. How do I get tickets?
You want tickets real bad?
Yeah.
Well, I know you're going to be glad when you hear this. We have our exclusive WAVA concert kits going out all night. Every hour.
Oh, wow, that sounds great.
Yeah, we don't just have concert tickets. We have concert tickets. They're both their albums. We have a limited edition New Kids on the Block poster.
It sounds pretty big.
What's your name?
Stacy.
Where you calling from, Stacy?
D.C.
Well, Stacy from D.C. Touch Tones will be tipping you to phone in and win in minutes on WAVA.
105 WAVA.
Wow, I want to go to the New Kids show.
I gotta go.
Gotta go. If I don't go, I'm just gonna die. What's your name?
Wilson Antel.
All right, Melissa. Touchstone, tip you to phone next hour again.
Okay.
I'm not telling everybody that.
Huh?
Never mind.
Did you notice how excited his listeners are about those concert tickets? My God, the phone must be ringing off the hook with calls from kids who are dying to win the contest. Did you realize that those calls were setups? He was required to promote the ticket giveaway. You can bet that every other jock on the station simply read the liner card, Touchstones will tip you to phone, but George enlisted the help of his request line callers. Hey, do me a favor. Tell me you have to know when we'll be giving away the tickets because you're dying to go and you got to go to bed soon. And he turned everyday mundane promo liners into exciting, fun on-air calls. And then there's the call from the woman whose husband is in jail. As you heard, that began as a joke. George started by doing a Casey Kasem impression. When he heard the woman say, "We're going to be far apart for a long time," he didn't know what she was referring to. But because he listens to his callers, he realized this was something he shouldn't joke around with. So he dropped the Casey Kasem voice and asked, "Why? Where's your husband?" When she replied, "In jail," almost any other jock would have made a joke about it. But George reacted as a human being. And as a result, he aired a phoner that not only caught the audience's interest, but also showcased another human side of this wild nighttime disc jockey. We're almost at the end of our Power Phones tape. Before I go, however, I'd like to offer a surprise, a classic phone bit from Dick Purton of Detroit. This is a put-on call. It was legal when and where he recorded it at CKLW in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, just across the U.S. border. If you're in the United States, you cannot legally air put-on calls. But I'm playing it for you now for two reasons. One, it illustrates several key elements of good phoners, which we'll briefly discuss at the conclusion of the call. And two, it's fun. By the way, one sign that two people are in rapport is when they speak the same language. Rapport means simply that the two people are communicating well, even if they're angry. Dick has a verbal habit. He uses the word fine as a punctuator. You are about to hear a disc jockey make a woman incredibly angry and upset, but Purton is such a good communicator and establishes such strong rapport that she ends up speaking his language. Listen for the moment when she starts saying, "Fine."
Okay, here's a put-on call to 3 girls going to the Virgin Islands on Eastern Airlines, and that United strike has still got things messed up.
Hello?
Hello, can I talk to Miss Paula Harris, please?
It's her.
Fine. My name is Earl Ratter from K-Spear Travel Agency at Royal Oak.
Right.
As I understand it, with our information here, you and 2 other girls are going down to the Virgin Islands Eastern Airlines flight at 9:40 this morning.
Yeah.
The flight has been oversold.
Listen, we made those reservations like 2 months ago.
I'm sure you did, but I mean, the airline called me. You see, I have very little control over that.
Well, what in hell are we supposed to do?
Right. Well, there is room for according to the computer printout, a Ms. Sue Harris she is scheduled to leave apparently as one of the 3. There is room on the flight for her.
Hey, listen, we made these reservations a long time ago, and we plan on going.
Right. However, I have the names.
Oh, nothing. Now, damn it, we're packed and we're ready to go. We've taken the time off work and we're going.
All right. Now, here's what can be done. You can all go out to the airport. There's a number of options I can offer you. You can all go out to the airport.
Offer us an option.
Well, I'm just trying to make it easy.
Damn it. I mean, we paid our money and everything.
Well, I'm just trying to make it so you can go. No, but it has to be done in a little bit of different way.
Well, you better do it. That's all I've got to say. Go ahead.
All right, fine. Now, you can all go out to the airport and wait standby in case there's a cancellation.
Oh, great.
The next flight out is Saturday afternoon at 3:10.
We have to stand at the airport till Saturday?
Mm-hmm.
Who the hell do you think we are?
Well, I'm just trying to do my part to get you girls down to the Virgin Islands.
Your part? You should have done your part. That's what we paid you for.
Well, I thought this might be your reaction, and so here's what
Thought so. Well, I'm glad you thought so.
Well, you don't have to be that bitter about it. I mean, I didn't...
Bitter about it? What do you mean? This is our vacation.
But I didn't cause the strike.
Put it in your hands, and we thought you'd take care of it for us. And you did a screwed up job.
But this is not my fault. This is the fault of the airline.
Not our fault either. We made reservations with Eastern, right? We should be on the plane.
Well, here's what I have in mind.
Yes, you better have something in mind.
All right.
Something that gets us out of the airport today.
Mm-hmm. Just calm down if you would there, and here's...
Can't calm down.
Well, I understand your concern.
I don't have any more days off. I can't wait till Saturday to go.
Fine. Here we go. Okay, now listen to what I'm saying. This may be a little unusual, but I have a friend at Selfridge Air Force Base. There is a National Guard plane leaving for St. Thomas later this morning for McCracken Field. Now, McCracken is the Air Force base right there, and every week at this time, Selfridge sends a cargo plane down there with supplies. Now, if this is okay...
Now, what about, can we all 3 get on that? Because one person's not going to want to go on the plane and 2 on this thing.
This is a different girl, isn't it? Am I talking now to a different girl than I did before?
Yes.
I talked before to Paula Harris. Now I'm talking to Sue Harris, her sister.
Yes.
Well, why did she change? Why did she leave the phone?
Talk anymore.
She doesn't want to talk anymore.
No.
Oh, I see. So this now is Sue.
Right.
All right, fine. You're asking if all 3 of you girls could get on the National Guard plane.
What time does one leave at the Selfridge Airport?
Well, right. That would leave at 12:10 p.m. today. And arrive tonight at 11:27 p.m. Direct flight nonstop from Mount Clemens down to the Virgin Islands.
Okay, now what happens when we get down there? Are they going to have transfers to the motel?
Right. You'll be transferred in an Air National Guard Jeep right to the hotel.
Now, wait a minute. Isn't there any possible way we could all get on that one plane?
Well, Ted, can I talk to Paula again, please?
Well, listen, because Paula is afraid to fly. Otherwise, I'd send her on the good plane by herself. But she's scared to death to fly.
Oh, she is a frightened fly. I see. Okay. Well, good. Then let me talk to her, and I think we might...
Okay, just a second.
Fine.
Hello?
Is this Paula again?
Yeah,
Hi, fine. This is Earl Ratter again, Paula. I didn't realize you were afraid to fly.
No, I'm scared to death.
Oh, are you? Well, then we'll get all 3 of you girls on the C-47 cargo plane.
Cargo plane?
Yeah, the one out of Selfridge. Perfectly safe.
Listen, we have to pay $255 to fly in a cargo plane?
No, indeed you don't. Here's the good news. We're reducing the cost of your flight by 1/3 because of this mess up in the transportation.
1/3? I think you should just give us a free flight.
Well, no, there's no free flights, Miss Harris. I thought I was calling to do you a favor. If I'm not, then fine.
You know, it really isn't a favor.
Well, well, fine. Then if
I'm going on Eastern Airlines, flying out this morning at 9:40.
Yes, I realize all that, but of course you know that United Airlines is on strike.
I don't care United Airlines.
Miss Harris, what am I supposed to tell you? They're on strike.
I don't care.
138,000 people.
Not my problem.
Miss Harris, I'd prefer to talk to your sister again, please.
Okay, fine.
Boy, I tell you, her and I would last about 10 minutes in the same room together.
Okay.
Hello, is this Sue?
Yes.
Sue, you're a much more reserved person than apparently your sister is.
I hold it in well.
Boy, I guess you do. She just all over me here. All right, well, let me explain what's going on here. This is a C-47 cargo plane.
Here, if we all were together.
All right, that's fine. You'll all be together, and there will be some others on board. There's 40 Mexicans going to St. Thomas to work as waiters.
Before you go through all this, let me make sure this is the second.
Mm-hmm.
Cargo. Does this go all the way right to St. Thomas? Stops or what?
No stops, non-stop plane. Leaves at 12:10 this afternoon and arrives at 11:27 p.m. tonight, non-stop. Now, we suggest you are there at 10 a.m. this morning for pre-flight instructions, like what to do if the plane has to ditch in the ocean, or if the cargo shifts during flight, or if lightning hits the plane. Your normal type of pre-flight instruction.
Now, why did this happen? I mean, why did we all of a sudden not get booked out of this plane?
There was a convention that is flying from Detroit down to the Virgin Islands, a convention of massage parlor owners, and these people simply bumped many of the people, such as you, that were scheduled to fly in the plane.
Well, when did they make these reservations?
I can't really...
They gave us the tickets in the first place yesterday. Just a second. No. I'm calling the airport. All three of us fly the cargo. Okay, now what's your number? I can call you right back.
Right, 963-1567.
Okay, what's your name?
Dick Purton.
Oh, shit. Who did this?
Girls, I got good news. Your flight with Eastern Airlines is on, and you'll be taking off as scheduled at 9:40 this morning for St. Thomas at the Virgin
Islands. Are we on the radio?
Yes, we are. Girl, have a good flight, girls.
Hey, thanks a lot.
So long.
Thanks for the problems, anyway.
Sure. So long, girls.
A couple of notes on this bit. Note how he listened to the other person and used what was given him. For instance, he is told that one of the women is afraid to fly. What does he do? Right. He says, "Oh, fine. Let me talk to her again." Note how he had mapped out the call. He prepared for it. I think the funniest line of the bit is when he explains the women have been bumped by a convention of massage parlor owners. I'm sure Purton prepared that explanation in advance, but how did he work it into the conversation? He waited until one of the women asked why they were being bumped. If he hadn't been asked, he would not have used the line. That's a perfect illustration of both the value of preparing and the value of listening to the other person. And this brings us to the end of power phones. Remember, good phones require preparation, thought, and control. But they should sound easy. And one more thing I hope you'll do when you put callers on the air. Have fun. Thanks for listening.